out there who is coming on into our webinar room, welcome to you. I hope this day is starting or maybe ending well for you, depending on what time it is in your neck of the woods. We are just going to wait a couple minutes to let everybody come in who is going to join us today so that we can get started with everybody in the room. So while we are waiting, I would love it if you would find that chat that's over on the right-hand side of your screen. Victoria's already said good evening. It's good evening for Victoria. Where are you logging in from? Let us know, because we get people logging in from all around the world, and we like to say hello to everyone. Diane, Delaware, hello. Paul from Sydney, good morning. Yes, Carrie Ann. It's going so fast. Carrie Ann from South Africa, and Robin's in Eugene, Oregon. Susan is in Pennsylvania. Carrie's in Washington. Hello. And Mary is in Woodstock, Georgia. Joyce is in Connecticut. And then Victoria is logging in from Paris, France. How lovely. Emily, hello from Ohio. Ingrid in Sedona, Arizona. Also a beautiful place. I've been there before. Lucy from Montreal, Canada. And Lisa from Los Angeles, hello, is logging in. Hello. Stephen from Wisconsin. Excellent. I was born in Wisconsin. I'm a cheesehead. Yana from North Carolina, and Carolyn from Cleveland, Jane from La Jolla, California, and Sally says good afternoon from Georgia. Kathleen says good morning from Santa Rosa, California, and David also is in France. Hello. Carmen's in Austin, Texas, Sandra, Wisconsin, Suzanne. Oh my goodness. We have so many people logging in here today from all around the world. It is super exciting. Sandra and Suzanne, Kevin and Linda, Roxanne, Tatiana, Chris, and oh my goodness. Okay, so how far away? We've gotten New Zealand, we've gotten Australia, we've gotten France, we've gotten Canada. This is amazing. And Art is logging in from the Appalachian Mountains in Georgia. That is gorgeous as well. And Darlene from the Canary Islands. That's a new one. I've never seen anybody logging in from the Canary Islands. Well, good morning to all of you. I think that's good. Thank you all, the rest of you, for logging in and saying hello to us. Welcome to the webinar today. We are so happy to have you here for this Viome Content webinar for February. We are going to go ahead and get started. February is, if you are not aware, American Heart Month, where we focus on the health of your cardiovascular system, and tons of information is disseminated on things like how to know the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest, or how to see the signs of a stroke in a loved one, learning CPR, and other essential life-saving knowledge. But we here at Viome also celebrate American Heart Month, and we believe in having all of that information is really, really important. But we also love to talk about how to keep your body and metabolic health in top shape, thereby lowering your risk for heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular diseases. And a key to this is understanding how your microbiome is connected to this essential part of your body's health and functionality. So helping me out today are two wonderful individuals who are part of our clinical nutrition team at Viome, Grant, Antoine, and Janelle Connell. Hello to you both, and thank you for joining me here today. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Hey, everyone. I also have to say happy Leap Day.
Yep.
I noticed one of our colleagues posted, today is an extra day of your life. What will you do with it? And I love that, because all of you are here using this extra day to think about your health, improve yourself. It's awesome. So glad we're all here.
Absolutely. Kudos to everybody to joining us today. And thank you both so much for doing the work for this webinar to give this great information to our users and our audience out there. And so we are going to go ahead and jump in and get started. And first up is, of course, we're going to talk about why is it important, heart and metabolic health. Who wants to start off today?
I think I will. Yeah, if you want to go to that next slide. Why is it important? Well, the heart's one of our 5 vital organs, right? We think of the heart, brain, lung, liver, kidneys. All these organs are vital to maintaining life. But interestingly, the heart's the only one that we need to have a whole functioning organ to live. We can live with part of our brain, part of our liver. We can live with one lung, one kidney, but we really need a whole functioning, healthy heart to live. And we need that heart to pump nutrients and oxygen to our tissues, and we need to transport toxins and waste products away from those tissues. And in the world of longevity, heart health, it's especially important given that it's the #1 cause of death when it comes to chronic disease in the Western world. So we want to be paying attention. And I want to highlight, it's not just a disease of old age, right? A lot of folks don't start paying attention to their heart health until maybe they're in their 40s and 50s. They get that first report of a high cholesterol, or sadly, a lot of folks don't pay attention until they've had their first event. They've experienced a heart attack, a stroke, a hypertensive crisis, and that gets their attention. It's a wake-up call, and they really start to get dialed in. But we don't have to wait for those things. And we know, like many chronic diseases, this is a disease that takes place, it develops over decades, years of our lives. In fact, they've done autopsies in young individuals in their 20s, right? Healthy, young 20-year-olds, maybe they die of a car accident or some other cause of death, some traumatic cause, but they'll do the autopsy, and we show evidence of cardiovascular disease. There's plaques in their arteries that are already there in their 20s. So this is a lifelong process, and the earlier we can start paying attention to it, then the better we can minimize the impact it has on our health, and really help support our health and longevity. So it's all about being proactive, right? And it really just with some simple screenings that we're going to talk about today, some simple lifestyle modifications that we're going to talk about, you can really push back this time to our first event. This is what we call primary prevention, right? And most of what we're going to talk about today is through the lens of primary prevention, because it's much easier to treat a disease before it fully manifests, right? Than it is to treat it once it's here. And then certainly there's no guarantee that if we do have an event, and I don't want to scare anybody, but there's no guarantee that we're going to survive that event, right? And sadly, many of us, I know personally, I have lost loved ones because of this. So it's important stuff, but we don't want it to be some heavy burden, right, that we have to carry. We need to think about our heart health positively and proactively. It's one of the few chronic diseases that we have a really good handle on the mechanisms at play and the interventions required to address them. So we should feel good about having some sense of control over our heart health, no matter what our age or our risk profile might be. Speaking of risk, you're going to hear a lot about risk today. We're going to provide you with a link at the end of the webinar, actually some resources with a couple of links. They're going to help you calculate your personal cardiovascular risk, right? These are the latest tools. They're an important part of risk assessment for your cardiovascular health, and they really help jumpstart the conversation with your physicians on how you can be more proactive and preventative in your heart health plan. So that said, let's have some fun. When I told my kids today about this webinar, they said I was going to have a hearty heart party. I say we do. Let's celebrate heart health. It's the same way we celebrate life and learn how we can get the most out of this vital organ. So next slide.
Yeah, I love that, Grant. Let's have that positive spin, right? What can we do for ourselves today? Use that extra day in our life. We want to highlight this connection, right? Here at Viome, we really focus on the microbiome. We know the importance of it to our health, and it's not just about our gut health and our digestion. Yes, our microbes are there and they do those things, and they're an important part of that. But what happens in our gut doesn't stay in our gut, I should say. If we think about our food like information, right? What we're putting into our body, our microbes take that information and they translate it. They metabolize it into different things. And those things then have downstream effects on our health. And our heart health is no exception to that. And we're going to talk about different areas of that today, but I do want to kind of highlight this connection. We see it in the real world. So people with things like inflammatory bowel disease, that would be like a Crohn's or an ulcerative colitis, they are actually about 6-fold higher risk of plaque buildup in their arteries. Right? So we're finding that connection, right? Why is it people with gut issues have more plaque? If we look at it in reverse, people who have metabolic disease like heart disease, diabetes, overweight, they have some real signatures in their gut, right? They usually have lower diversity, less butyrate production in the gut, maybe a lack of some of the beneficial microbes like Akkermansia that are helpful for those metabolic conditions. So we're seeing it on both ends, right? There's changes in the gut that are manifesting in metabolic issues. So we want to make sure we are caring for the gut all the way through this, because ultimately that's going to have that impact on our heart. I'd like to think of maybe a couple examples that we hear all the time, right? We hear eat fiber for your heart, and that's a great one. But if we relate that to our gut, our gut's doing a lot of the work. Our microbiome is. So our microbes take that fiber that we eat, they metabolize it, they create some helpful compounds, things like butyrate. And butyrate has a lot of different functions in the body, but one of the things it does is it actually is a signaling molecule, and it tells our body to shut down inflammation, right? Turn off those pro-inflammatory signals. Our heart health is, heart disease is connected to inflammation in the body, same with diabetes. We also hear, I think a staple you always hear is, red meat and heart health, right? Well, the gut plays a role there too. Our gut microbes, depending again on who they are in there, what they're doing in the environment, what you have going on personally, those microbes can take that red meat and they can produce things like TMA. TMA is a risk factor for heart disease. It actually, it's converted to TMAO later on, and it can affect our lipids and our hormone balance, and that increases our risk of heart disease. So it's really important to make that connection that the foods we eat interact with our microbes, and those microbes do things to our foods that then impact our heart health.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great point, because most people think, oh, it's the fiber. There's something magical about the fiber. In fact, it's not the fiber at all. I mean, it's important, but it's the microbes, right? You give the fiber to the microbes, and then they do
They're
the
doing
razzle
the magic.
dazzle magic. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a twist. On top of that, we want to talk about oral microbiome, right? Often overlooked microbiome, but you can't overstate the importance of the oral microbiome and oral health and its impact on whole body health and heart health, right? So microbes in our mouth help regulate our blood pressure. They can be a source of inflammation. There's associations between certain bacteria in the mouth and plaque formation, heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia. So it really can be a source of either positive or negative influence. And we'll talk a little bit about those mechanisms a little later on, but it's not going to be one of your traditional risk factors for heart disease or heart health, but it's an important part of the conversation, and certainly something we can use to leverage our prevention strategy when it comes to our heart health and our whole body health. And we've established the case for the gut and oral microbiome connections in other webinars. I just want to highlight, we've got a YouTube page that you could always go to that has all of our previous webinars. I think last year's 2020, the gut heart connection webinar from February 2023 is a great deep dive into the scores and recommendations tied to heart health. Today, we're going to do less of a deep dive into those mechanisms and really focus about the specific risk factors, what you can do as an individual to assess your risk in those buckets, and then some of the lifestyle modifications and Viome recommendations, certainly scores that tie into that. But we're going to be talking a lot about those risk factors and screening. And Viome and the Viome food and supplement recommendations are certainly an important part of that when it comes to individualizing your plan, your prevention strategy. So I just want to kind of plant that seed. You should be thinking of all these things. We're going to give you some general recommendations, but your Viome recommendations is going to complement that further, especially when it comes to these microbiome connections that really haven't hit the mainstream at this point. And then always keep in mind, if you tested or haven't tested, anytime you get a non-optimal score or a non-optimal result on your score, your recommendations are going to target that. So it's kind of a no-brainer. You're going to get that support that you need. So as you're going through, we're going to highlight some of the scores for each risk factor. If you have your app open on the side, you can see, look up the score and see where you're at for that activity. Rest assured, if you do have non-optimal activity, it's highly likely that recommendations for improving that score are already worked into your recommendations. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you. So just know that. I think we're ready to get into it.
Good. Woo.
So heart disease risk factors. Just wanted to briefly introduce the risk factors. A lot of what we're going to talk about today are modifiable risk factors, right? This is where we have the most control of our destiny and where lifestyle interventions can really have an effect on our gene expression and our general health. But it's important to keep in mind there are non-modifiable risk factors, things like your age, which, maybe this
Some
isn't
might
such a
argue
static
you
number
can.
anymore when we start talking about biological age, but traditionally we consider it non-modifiable. Gender, male sex is going to have a higher risk. Certain races and ethnicities are going to have a higher risk and propensity for heart disease. Think about like South Asian descent. And then certainly family history. So if you have any early onset heart disease or familial or hyperlipidemia in your family history, that's going to be a risk factor. And then there's other things like kidney disease and autoimmune disease that are what we call risk enhancing factors that really they're just going to exacerbate this milieu of inflammation and this perfect recipe that we'll talk about for the development of heart disease. So
Grant, maybe I'll jump in here. I think it's important too to point out, and you talked about this earlier, that about 80% of heart disease is preventable. That's the estimation. So even though, yes, there's definitely people in the population that have that genetic component with their family, maybe like you're saying, sex, age, all of those things play a role. We do have a lot of power over it.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking about these things you have on the list here. Something I read once is that, only about 3% of the population is actually meeting these basic criteria for prevention, right? So things like not smoking, exercising about 150 minutes a week, eating a healthy diet, keeping your body fat down, like those basic things are what contribute to making heart disease preventable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's important to start having the conversation both with yourself, with your family, with your doctor, and really get to know your full risk profile, right? And that said, I want to be clear that today's webinar is purely educational. We're not here to give you medical advice. We don't know you. We don't know your specific situation. So before starting or stopping any intervention, please talk with your doctors. But if we go back to modifiable risk factors, so we have here on the slide, you can see smoking, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, body weight, and metabolic health / diabetes, right? So we won't be talking a lot about smoking today. It's kind of a no-brainer. If you're smoking, you got to stop, right? I know that's easier said than done, but there are a ton of tools, a ton of resources out there that are available to you to help you break that habit. And, I want to be clear, it's not just tobacco smoke, vaping, smoking cannabis, all these things are going to have the same impact on your heart health. So talk to your doctor for more information. We'll provide some resources at the end of the webinar to help get you started. But let's dig in. Let's talk a little bit about cholesterol.
All right, cool.
Let's see that next slide. So cholesterol, everyone thinks cholesterol, they think heart health. Everyone hears about good and bad cholesterol. That's really not accurate. It's not about the cholesterol itself. It's about the proteins that transport the cholesterol, where they're taking it into the body, and then the propensity for those particles for forming plaques, right, in our arteries, which is going to lead to heart disease. That is heart disease. So you need to know, it's fundamental. You need to know your cholesterol levels. And if you only know one number, you should know your LDL level. So if you want to screen for your cholesterol, you want to know your LDL. A basic lipid panel costs like $8. It's going to have a calculated LDL in there along with your total cholesterol and triglycerides. But you want to know, focus on that LDL because it's the best proxy for those proteins, those ApoB protein particles that are the most plaque forming. Right. So ideally, you're looking for an LDL that's below 100. There's proponents that say we could have it even lower than that, maybe below 75 if we're talking about true primary prevention, where we can really make heart disease an option, right? But a good starting point is that 100 LDL of 100 threshold. And if you're higher than that, then we want to start paying attention and implementing some of the strategies we have today, and then having that conversation with our physicians on how we can get that down further. So if you have both the access and ability, there are better labs to assess your cholesterol status and your risk for heart disease. One of those is going to be LP, what we call LP little a. And don't worry about these things. These are going to be in the handout that we provide at the end. So if you're trying to hurry along and write down, there's some weird names here I'm talking about. But LP little a, everyone should be screened at least once for this particle. It's highly atherogenic, highly associated with heart disease. Typically, it's like, hey, if you check it once and you're normal, you're good to go. But there are some folks that are walking around with very high LPAs. And these are the folks that we see with early onset heart disease. So you want to screen for that at least once. Other markers, the ApoB I mentioned, is going to be a great test. Your small density LDLs, oxidized LDLs, what we call an MPO or myeloperoxidase, really to help estimate your risk for heart disease. And then there's what we call an NMR lipoprotein assessment. All these things are available online or through your physician. I suggest starting with your physician to see what options are available to you. Some systems and some health insurance companies are more restrictive than others, but maybe if they can't do it within like your in-network system, maybe there's an opportunity or someone they can connect you with to do further assessments. But all that said, I'm geeking out here, but at least know at the base level that one LDL, right? If you know your LDL, then you can take some action, and that's typically that's the traditional strategy, right? If you're looking at your total cholesterol, I could care less about your total cholesterol. Your triglycerides could be important from a metabolic perspective. But you have to understand that the biology is complex here. And in cholesterol, it's not the only ingredient for the recipe for heart disease. It's a required ingredient, but it's not the only one. You need this blood vessel damage, inflammation, immune response, right? And these labs I just mentioned help you get a better look at some of these other ingredients in the recipe. And that's really where Viome's LDL cholesterol pathway scores comes in. It's meant to be a more comprehensive score. It doesn't directly assess your LDL levels, but what it does measure, it looks at gene expression that's related to high LDL levels. It takes into account all those things I just mentioned with immune activation and oxidation, blood vessel dysfunction, transport of cholesterol. And it's a really we think a really valuable tool in your prevention arsenal. And you know, we get some pushback on that score because folks will say, hey, I have a perfectly normal LDL, but I've got a non-optimal Viome score. What gives? But it's really interesting that this score can pick up on the manifestations of early heart disease, unlike a simple LDL test can do. So if you've tested, I encourage you to look more into the score and the recommendations tied to that score. If you haven't tested, I encourage you to test it and get a better look. Let's talk about other strategies for lowering LDL.
Right.
Yeah, let's jump into some of, I guess, our lifestyle strategies here. Thanks, Grant. I think the question I get often, especially today, like we really are in this kind of like high fat craze moment, is like, isn't fat good for me, right? Like, what types of fat should I be eating? How much fat? All of that. Like Grant mentioned, you know, LDL is one risk factor. And LDL can increase with high saturated fat in the diet, and we want to be aware of that. You do also need some of those other components he mentioned, you know, the oxidation, the inflammation. Those are also parts of heart disease. The LDL alone is not causing the heart disease. So we're going to get into maybe some of those aspects in a little bit. But if you're looking at your LDL, if it's running high, being aware of the types of fats that you're choosing is so important. It doesn't mean you have to be on a low-fat diet, right? People can be metabolically healthy and eat a slightly higher fat diet. But we want to choose more polyunsaturated fats. That's really the key. So we're going to cut back on the saturated fats, which are going to come mostly from our animal products, really bump up the polyunsaturated fats. Those include omega-3 fats, and you're going to find those polys in like mostly your plant-based sources, nuts, seeds. Walnuts are a great source, avocados, olive oils, but also in your fish. So salmon, sardines, halibut, all of those yummy fish too are gonna provide that for you. So remember, it doesn't mean low fat diet. It means low saturated fat, high polyunsaturated fat when we're talking about that. The other question I get a lot around LDL has to do with eggs, right? Like we know, I think everyone, truthfully, over the past, 40 years, the pendulum has kind of swung back and forth with eggs on, are they good for you? Are they not good for you? They have a lot of cholesterol in them. We get a lot of that debate. And some of it does depend on you individually. If you have some of that, family history, that genetic predisposition, maybe you're a cholesterol absorber a little higher, then yeah, something like eggs you're going to want to be mindful of. When we look at studies, there's been some really large scale studies that take people that, even eating like 12 eggs a week didn't really increase their cardiovascular risk factors. So for the majority of individuals, we can enjoy eggs, we can have them here or there. Now, if you're at high risk, if you've got that family history, that's when you want to have the conversation with your doctor and be a little bit more mindful of, hey, am I absorbing more cholesterol? Maybe eggs are something I keep to just once in a while.
And it's important to highlight, it's not just about the egg itself. That's why a lot of these studies are muddled. So what are we cooking the eggs in, right? Are we using butter? Are we using oils, vegetable oils?
Adding cheese.
What are we eating the eggs with? People tend to eat it with bacon and toast and sausage, right? So these other things that are high sources of saturated fat. So it's really hard to tease out exactly just the nutritional impact of the egg itself.
Right.
Janelle mentioned the high absorbing thing. You could test for that. But for most folks, the eggs, I do a lot of soft boiled eggs. I love them. My kids love them. It's easy. It takes 6 minutes, right? And, we're busy and trying to get to school in the mornings or to a practice. Easy to do and really low impact when it comes to saturated fat and cholesterol.
Yeah, that's a great point, to think of it as your entire meal together. What else is going along with that egg?
Exactly.
Similar is the fiber, and I mentioned this at the beginning, and I want to just focus in particularly on soluble fiber right now. Soluble fiber dissolves in water, and in our digestive system, it kind of forms like a gel, and that's really helpful for us because that gel that moves through, it binds to cholesterol, it binds to bile acids, and that prevents their absorption into the bloodstream. So it can help us not absorb that cholesterol back into our system quite as much. You think of Cheerios, right? Cheerios always has like the heart health symbol. You don't have to eat Cheerios to get your soluble fiber though, luckily. But oats are still a great source. Some organic oats, some overnight oats where they soak, that helps with the digestion also. Beans, lentils, but something I really like is chia seeds.
Oh,
because it just it packs a punch, right? In about 2.5 tablespoons of chia seeds, you can get 10 grams of fiber. And it's mostly soluble. So that's awesome. And if we're aiming for at least 30 grams a day, that's like a third right there. You can have it at breakfast in your, chia pudding.
We love our chia seeds.
Fiber. That's a lot of fiber. And most people these days are not getting their fiber that they need daily. Is that correct?
That
is very correct.
Yeah. Most adults get about 15 grams a day. So we're at half of what we should be getting. Really, we should be getting 30 and upwards. So if you haven't ever tried, use an app, use a MyFitnessPal or something like that, and track your fiber intake for a few days, and it might be really insightful.
Yeah. One thing I'm loving right now is oat bran. I've been eating a lot of oat bran.
Oh, yeah.
Just like oats, right? Or traditional, like old-fashioned oats, but it cooks faster and it takes less. So like for me, it only takes like a cup of water and like a third of a cup, the scoop of oat bran. super ready to go. It's a little smoother in texture,
It
easy
is.
to eat.
Do you add
But
like some fruit or nuts on top?
yeah, this morning I did
Good,
some
yeah.
walnuts and some blueberries. It's like 5 minutes, you're done. Easy, healthy breakfast on the go. And it's high protein, high fiber, like all the things we want to try to be getting into our diet. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and we do use some fibers, some of these soluble fibers in our supplements at Viome, our stiff packs that have pre and probiotics in them. We utilize the apple pectins, beta glucan, psyllium. Those are all going to be soluble fibers that help support cholesterol as well.
All right.
good stuff. Are we moving on to blood pressure?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Excuse me. Blood pressure, the next risk factor. How do you screen for your blood pressure? You got to take your blood pressure. This one, it sounds easier though than it actually is. Blood pressure is a little sneaky because it's so dynamic and there's so many variables, so many factors that it can impact our blood pressure. Everything from our mood to our movement to our sleep, caffeine. Even going to your doctor's office, right, can be a stressful situation, and it's what we call white coat hypertension. You're so amped up because you have to go in front of the doctor that they're doing your blood pressure and it's inaccurate reading. It's falsely elevated. So excuse me. Right now, really the best possible way to screen your blood pressure is you're going to need a at-home machine, right? Whether you borrow it or purchase one, that's up to you. But getting a blood pressure monitor, I mean, we're talking $30 here, $40 to purchase one to have around the house. Yeah, when you do purchase one, make sure it's a validated machine. That the government will look at these and validate them for their accuracy. We're going to give you a resource for that at the end. But get your hands on a blood pressure machine, and ideally, you're testing your blood pressure, your resting blood pressure when you've been sitting for at least 5 minutes, right? 2 times a day, in the morning and at night. Typically, you want to do about the same time, so maybe 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. every day. You want to do that for about a week. 2 weeks is even better. But if you can do that, you can get your daily blood pressure readings and then get an average of those. Right now, that's going to be the best possible snapshot we can get of your blood pressure. Sounds like a lot. It's really not. Just takes minimal effort. And again, just having your hands or access to that blood pressure machine. Now, if you don't have access, you're like, what? I'm not an old man. I don't need a blood pressure cuff. Oh, I need to mention, when you get one, you don't want the wrist or the finger, but you want to get a bicep cuff that fits appropriately. We're going to give you a guide, again, that'll have some of that information in there, but a lot of these other machines will give you inaccurate readings. So I'm really going for that bicep cuff. If you can't get your hands on a machine, you've got some other options. So we talked about going to the doctor's office. That's always an option. You can go to your local pharmacy. Typically, they have that little blood pressure machine that's sitting over there. Make sure that you sit and rest, though, so you can get the most accurate reading possible. That's going to give you a number. You can go to your local fire department. They'd be happy to take a blood pressure for you. If you are affiliated with the school or university, you can go to your school nurse or the clinic. Ask them, reach out and see if they can grab a blood pressure for you. But you just need to know your numbers. Once you know your numbers, that's actionable, and you can start to take steps on improving that blood pressure. Ideally, optimally, we're looking at a blood pressure. You got your top number and your bottom number. Your top number should be below 120. Your bottom number, your diastolic, should be below 80. If it's not, then maybe you want to do a few more screenings to see, was that an accurate assessment or not. If it's up there, then you want to, again, start having the conversation with your doctor. I've seen patients walking around with the blood pressure like 200s over 90s, crazy high, like stroke-worthy high blood pressure, walking around oblivious, having no idea. They feel completely normal. But they have this extremely high blood pressure that they're unaware of, and really putting themselves and their organs in a situation where they're at higher risk for all types of bad things that we don't want to get into. But so this isn't necessarily something we can feel in our body. Some people can. You can start to have headaches and maybe some dizziness, some fatigue associated with high blood pressure. But you need to know your numbers. You need to check in. With Viome and Viome scores, we have multiple scores that are related to blood pressure and helping to maintain healthy blood pressure. Here you can see uric acid, homocysteine, TMA. Janelle mentioned renin-angiotensin. Of all these, I think the uric acid is the most important in my mind. Uric acid, most people think of uric acid, they think of gout, right? And that's really the only context they think, and that gouty arthritis. But it's really, I just got to step back. So there's the diagnosis of hypertension, right? We call it essential hypertension. That means you have blood pressure, high blood pressure, and we don't know why, right? And it's the most common form of high blood pressure that gets diagnosed. And really, they don't know why you have high blood pressure, but they're going to put you on the medications to help you lower that blood pressure through other mechanisms. But it turns out that uric acid, in fact, has this high, strong association with high blood pressure. And often it's the uric acid itself that's raising your blood pressure. So if you find yourself, your numbers are elevated, you are being diagnosed with essential hypertension, have a conversation with your doctor about your uric acid levels. It's a simple blood test, costs like $5 maybe. You can look at that level, and there's actions and steps you can take. Now, we have that wrapped into our Viome recommendations. It's not looking at your blood uric acid level, but it's looking at the microbial production of uric acid. So that uric acid, your microbes can produce that in your gut, you absorb it, and now that affects your blood uric acid. So we give recommendations to modulate that activity in your gut, and maybe some of the downstream detrimental effects. But it's a little different. And just because your microbial production is high doesn't guarantee that your blood level is high or that that's the root cause of your blood pressure, but it's an important part of it. And certainly the homocysteine and TMA production come into that as well. So again, it's just this global picture, this perfect soup, this milieu of different metabolites and signals and damaging effects that are coming together to create heart disease. And that's where the Viome scores and these screenings can really come into play to give you a better insight into how your lifestyle and environment might impact your heart health.
Yeah. All right. Do you have more to talk about here? Or do you want the next?
I don't. Let's get into some recommendations for blood pressure.
All right.
Yeah. How can we talk about blood pressure without talking about salt, right? Half of Americans have high blood pressure, roughly. So I think this is something we all have to kind of keep an eye on and be aware of. Now, there's definitely some people that are more sensitive to salt than others. But I think what's really interesting is they've looked at this and they've taken groups, put them on a low sodium diet, put them on a high sodium diet, and then had them flip-flop, right? So we can see within that individual what's going on a high sodium versus low sodium diet. And for about 75% of those people, their blood pressure is lower when they reduce the sodium in their diet. So it's got a lot of evidence behind it, and it's mostly just due to that fluid balance in our body, right? The more water we're holding on to, the harder it is for our heart to pump that around. We want to kind of take that pressure off of our heart, ease it up a little bit by just watching, all those the extras, right? I don't ever mean to say like don't add a little salt to your meal. I think that's not where we get into trouble. It's mostly when we're doing the processed foods.
Absolutely.
We're doing the canned foods, that kind of stuff where we're really eating out. We're going to get a ton.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we want to watch for it. And of course, if you're an athlete, still good to replace some of those electrolytes and the sodium after you exercise. You're just gonna have to play around with that a little bit for yourself. But for most of us who are maybe, lifting weights a few times a week and walking, a low sodium diet is going to be helpful for our heart. But I can't really talk about sodium without balancing it with potassium. And that's where our fruits and vegetables come in. I think there's got to be the most evidence for blood pressure around eating your fruits and vegetables. And that's because they're loaded with potassium. And that potassium, again, regulates our blood fluid levels. When we have enough potassium, it actually helps us get rid of the excess sodium in our body. So we want to get tons of those in. Luckily, if you have your Viome recommendations, you're going to have kind of a guidance of which fruits and vegetables to look towards. We know that not everyone feels great or digests every vegetable well. It's totally understandable. But most all fruits and vegetables are going to have some potassium. So just get them in, right? We want to aim for those 5 or 6 or more servings in a day, so you're getting your potassium needs. I kind of threw in on the slide with potassium nitrates. I don't know if you ever noticed, Grant, but there are like some foods that look like what they're beneficial for. And I think of that with beets. Like a beet is like a little heart, especially when you cook it, it just looks like a little heart.
Yeah.
Some of our foods like beets, beet greens, celery, there's, several foods naturally have these nitrates in them. And our microbes can convert those to nitric oxide. And that helps widen our blood vessels, right? It helps reduce that blood pressure. So again, back to those fruits and vegetables, you're going to get a lot of benefits through including those. Let's see, our last bullet here is deep breathing. So it's not just what we eat that affects our blood pressure, but what we're doing, right? Our stress levels, our mood, our sleep, all of those things. And I love the deep breathing aspect because it's super simple. It takes a few seconds of our day and we can have a big impact on our heart health from it. It's actually, I believe that it lowers your heart rate as you exhale. So when you're doing a deep breathing exercise, you want to focus on a shorter inhale. Maybe the inhale is 3 to 4 seconds, you pause, and then you exhale for 7 to 8 seconds, right? That exhale becomes longer, and repeat that a few times, and that will bring down your resting heart rate. I think Lisa's got something for us here.
I do. So box breathing is one of the techniques that this handout goes into. These are very basic mindfulness practices. If you would like to experiment with them, they seem very simple, but it is not to be discounted how powerful they can be in helping lower your blood pressure and your heart rate and your stress levels as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just that little thing that you can take care of your heart within 30 seconds at any moment of the day by practicing that. Another one I love is just getting outside. Getting outside for 20 minutes a day brings down your resting heart rate also. So some really simple tools to help with that blood pressure.
Absolutely. Before we leave blood pressure, I just want to say, Janelle mentioned sleep. If you feel like you're doing all the right things, you still find that you have high blood pressure, talking about that root cause of what might be underlying in causing your blood pressure. Sleep is one of those sneaky little things that is actually so important for resetting our blood pressure when you think of our circadian rhythm. And so during sleep, we should be getting really our lowest heart rate and lowest blood pressure for the day, and really setting the tone for the rest of the day. But if we have interrupted sleep, poor quality sleep, sleep apnea, all these things, alcohol can really affect the quality of that sleep, and which is going to then affect your walking, talking, blood pressure, and heart rate throughout the day. This is one of the reasons a lot of doctors will recommend you take your blood pressure medicine at night before you go to bed, to help with these natural mechanisms that help us control our blood pressure. But if you find that you're having an issue with your blood pressure, you feel like you're doing a lot of the right things, you've lost some weight, and you're doing some of these lifestyle interventions that Janelle's brought up, take a deeper look at your sleep and see if you might be a candidate for a sleep study to know a little bit more. That sleep, that high quality, anti-inflammatory sleep is going to really lay the foundation for whole body health, and anything that disrupts it, really everything we're talking about today, from weight management to blood sugar management to cholesterol and heart health, sleep really hits all these targets. So something to look out for.
Absolutely.
Uh-oh.
Are you okay, Grant?
I'm okay, but all these notifications, I guess my focus time ended or something. So
I can't
see my screen. Yeah. So here we go. Getting back to it. Our next risk factor is actually 2 risk factors. We combine them into one slide because they're so interrelated. So we're talking about weight management, and we're talking about metabolic health and diabetes, right? Now they're interrelated, but you can have one without the other, right? Just because you're obese doesn't mean that you have diabetes, and vice versa. So, but when it comes to the strategies and the biological mechanisms, they're highly dependent on each other or related. So we combine them here. So first we'll talk about metabolic health, and you got to know your numbers. We keep talking about this, but to assess your risk at a bare minimum, you want to know what your fasting blood glucose is, right? This is a typical standard lab. It's a part of a chemistry lab that's like, again, $5. But you get this screening lab and know your fasting glucose. Ideally, this is below 100. Optimally, you're probably sitting around 85. But it's a good screening tool. And if it is high, you can take the next steps. Kind of the next best marker we have is what we call our hemoglobin A1C. Your fasting glucose is more of a spot check. It gives you some information. It's important information. But your hemoglobin A1C, that percentile, is going to give you more sense of what your average blood sugar is as you're going through your day. And it's really an assessment of your average blood sugar for the last 3 months. So you get that hemoglobin A1C, you can look at that, and they give you a number. Usually you'll see numbers in the fives, so maybe like a 5.2, 5.3, 5.5. It's a percentile. We want to be below 5.7%. When we get into 5.7 and above, we start talking about pre-diabetes. We get into 6.4 and above, we start talking about actual diabetes, right? But you want to know where you are in this scale, right? It's dynamic. That if you're living the dream optimally, your hemoglobin A1C is probably going to be about 4.9 to 5. That's going to indicate that you have an average blood sugar of about 100, right? You're going about to 115 or as low as 85 throughout the day, but you're able to maintain this tight glucose control throughout the day, despite your meals and beverages that you're having. So if you have an opportunity to get a continuous glucose monitor, you can really get an eye or handle on that and see how different things in your lifestyle are impacting your blood sugar. It can be very informative. I think everyone should have to wear one at least once for a few weeks or maybe a month. It's really eye-opening. I found out that my coffee creamer, my almond milk coffee creamer, was just kicking my butt, and it was like the worst thing I was having throughout the day. Every morning, first thing in the morning, just this crazy high blood sugar spike. So it can be really, again, eye-opening. But you want to know your numbers, and a lot of us are walking around with normal fasting glucose and normal hemoglobin A1C. What we medically would say is normal. You're a 5.6 or a 5.5, you're normal. But and for your average physician, if you're coming in and that's what your blood lab says, they're not gonna do anything further. They're like, oh well, there's nothing to do here. But if you want to be proactive and take the next step, a lot of us, even with these normal labs, have insulin resistance. To talk about young kids again, they've done studies in college kids, healthy young individuals in their 20s. They look at their muscles, they look at their insulin resistance, and they already see the early signs of insulin resistance are already present. And their muscles have an impaired ability to uptake that glucose to help us control our blood sugar. So again, another very early process. If your standard labs are coming back normal, but you want to see, hey, is there something more I could do? Talk to your physician about getting a glucose tolerance test. It's a simple test. If you've ever been pregnant, or you've heard of a gestational glucose tolerance test. We do this to screen during pregnancy for gestational diabetes. It's the exact same test, but you want to add an insulin level to that. So every time they're doing your blood, what you're going to do, you're going to drink some glucose. It's a defined amount, and then they're going to watch you over time, and they're going to do serial glucose readings, right? And see, hey, where does your glucose go after we give you this challenge? You want to do the glucose and the insulin at the same time, because this is going to tell us how hard your body's having to work and how much insulin it has to produce to try to control your blood sugar, giving that defined amount of glucose that we just gave you. So it can be very informative and really sensitive to this underlying insulin resistance, even though you're walking in with the fasting glucose that's below 100 or right at 100. Again, if you want to be proactive, that'd be the step. Now, it's a talk you got to have with your physician. You have to be willing to take an hour or two out of your day to go do the test, but it's worth doing. And only mention it because metabolic health has such a tremendous impact on our whole body health. We're talking about heart disease today, and certainly metabolic health is a one of the strongest risk factors for heart disease, but it's because it has all these downstream implications for inflammation and dysfunction, dysregulation, that really creates this environment and sets the stage for the development of other chronic diseases. And it's, I guess, we want to be paying attention to it. And that's when Viome, we've got so many scores that are tied into metabolic health. We have our glycemic response model. That's, not everyone can get access to a continuous glucose monitor. So we have this model to try to predict whether or not you would have a high, I wish I had this for my coffee creamer, a high prediction, predict a high glucose response to an individual food. And Viome's automatically going to move those to either minimize or enjoy for you based off that prediction. And then everything from butyrate production, bile acid metabolism, and metabolic fitness, that's the metabolic fitness of your microbiome and how it's hurting you or helping you in terms of controlling your blood sugar and your blood lipids. We take a look at that. So a big piece of the puzzle there, especially when it comes to individualizing your diet plan to control your blood sugar and your weight. Now, when it comes to weight, again, you got to know your number, the bare minimum. You want to know your BMI. So height and weight, you can find calculators online. We'll give you a resource. You want to look that up and know where you fall. What's the category? It's not the best marker, but it is a starting point. It can give you information. If you're a larger person, big bone, lots of muscle mass, then those numbers can be a little more skewed. So we have other methods that we can look into, our lean body mass, our body fat percentage, our visceral fat, very important when it comes to metabolic health. Some of the cheap, easy tools, they have, there's a company, a machine called InBody, that have these tools, really just scales that will do your fat, your lean body mass, your body fat percentage, your visceral fat, your water content. You can find these in your area at different doctor's offices. Gyms will have them oftentimes. We're going to give you a link to where you can look one of those up and reach out and see if you can go get a basic screening. If you want to take it even further, there's you can go get a body composition DEXA scan where they're going to go. You're going to take just a few minutes. They're going to scan your body. A lot of these machines you've heard of for evaluating bone health, but we can do a very low radiation DEXA scan, get your body composition. It's going to be the most accurate. Really get a look at your body fat and that visceral fat, and get that as a starting point. And once we have that information, we can take action, and we know how aggressive or how relaxed we can be when it comes to managing our weight and controlling our diet for healthy weight. But just a couple of things there to look for. And again, we're going to give you, there's a DEXA scan company that's pretty much nationwide. We're going to give you a link to them, or you can look them up and see if that's something you might be able to access.
All right.
Nice. Yeah, I've had one of those DEXA scans done before. It's pretty informative. It's cool.
Nice.
Okay, so let's talk about some lifestyle hacks for metabolic health. The first one we have on here is to limit sugar. And I think it's really important first to say that sugar doesn't cause diabetes, right? We want to make sure we're clear on that. But we've talked about, these metabolic conditions with diabetes and heart disease and obesity. They all have this underlying commonality of inflammation, right? And that's where we're looking at with the sugar, is how is it promoting inflammation in the body? If you haven't done this before, I would definitely challenge you to remove added sugar from the diet. It's a big challenge to take on. That doesn't mean don't have a dessert once in a while, go to a celebration, have your birthday, all those things, still do that. But look at those packages on the foods you're eating. If you're getting meats that are already marinated, a lot of times those marinades are going to have extra sugar added. Just start peeking at those labels and see what foods have sugar in them. We're really lucky today that there are a lot of other options out there that limit their ingredient list. Even if you wanted, like some crackers, some gluten-free crackers, some pita crackers, you're going to find ones without that added sugar if you want to look for that. But start cutting that way back. We're going to work on that inflammation, which is going to help reduce the risk of metabolic disease.
And make sure you're not drinking your sugars, right?
Yes.
Beverages are the biggest culprit of,
A single
high
soda
blood
has
sugars.
so much sugar in it. It's crazy.
and check out your little latte that you might be getting at your local coffee shop, or your pink drink or whatever it is. Those can be extremely high in sugar. So just a heads up.
Yeah, great point. And so on the other side of that, right, if we want to combat this inflammation in the body, we want to look to boost antioxidants in the diet. And these are really going to help target that, help bring that inflammation down in the body, those pathways. When I think of like our foods that are real powerhouses of this, I always think of berries. Anything that has like a dark, rich color, like, blueberries and blackberries and raspberries, have got that great color to them, is going to be a really good sign that it's high in antioxidants. Pomegranates are similar, right? They've got that rich color, and they're actually a food that has been studied quite a bit in relationship to heart health. It's not too often that people will study an actual food. They might study like a compound of that food, but pomegranate juice has been shown to reduce plaques in the arteries, and impacts that LDL oxidation. So that's a really cool one. If pomegranates are on your enjoy or superfood list, throw those in regularly into your diet. They're definitely a superfood for heart health. And then our last one is movement. I called it movement here. Doesn't have to necessarily be exercise, right? Grant kind of alluded to it. Our muscles will take up sugar. We're talking about our metabolic health. We want to balance that blood sugar, and muscles do that in a way that doesn't require insulin. So it makes it really, really special, really great way to manage blood sugar without having to pump out more insulin into the body. Also, it's going to lower your resting heart rate over time. And the key there is regular exercise. Regular exercise lowers your resting heart rate over time. So that means getting into a routine that works for you. If it's 30 minutes a day, that's awesome. That's a great start. If it's 30 minutes 3 days a week, start there. They've actually done some tests, and they've looked at, is there like a certain type of exercise that's better for lowering your heart rate? Turns out pretty much all of them help. So you're good with whatever you like to do. If you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, endurance training and yoga tended to be the best. Weight training actually helped in women, but not in men, interestingly enough. So for our men out there, it's still good to balance it with maybe some lower intensity days of a little yoga, a little walking, something like that. Bring that heart rate down. But any kind of movement overall is going to be helpful for lowering the heart rate, lowering the blood sugar, helping to reduce risk of any metabolic diseases.
Yeah, we don't have to go hard every day, right?
Yeah, what's really interesting is like they've actually looked at the extreme of the other side, and there you actually get some damage to your arteries and to your heart when you are an extreme athlete. Those ultra marathoners who are doing it really regularly. So there probably is some kind of sweet spot in the middle where we're exercising regularly, but not too intensely.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ready for the next slide?
Let's do it. Yeah, we're running out of time here, so I'm going to keep this
I know. We're
brief.
running up at the hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. We're just having too much fun talking about this stuff. So we've made it all through the traditional risk factors. We talked a lot today about what you can do to screen for those risk factors. We want to throw oral health in here. We mentioned it at the very beginning, that connection of the oral microbiome to your heart health. So again, we just wanted to end with this idea that your oral health matters, and it's absolutely true. When we talk about chronic inflammation and really being this fire for chronic disease and for heart disease, your mouth and your oral health certainly can be a source of this. So we want to be, again, proactive. We want to be able to assess and test. We've incorporated in our Viome test, the saliva test, both OHI and FBI kits. So a lot of great information. Of all the scores that you're going to get with those assessments, a couple here I thought were the most directly related to heart health. You can see the oral disease promoting microbes and the oral pro-inflammatory pathways. These are going to be built into those Viome scores and recommendations, but there's Well, first off, everyone's heard about leaky gut, right? So we think about leaky gut, the same exact thing happens in the mouth, but we just call it leaky gums, where this barrier that should be intact is compromised, and now microbes and things that are in the oral space can come across, inner circulation, and cause detrimental downstream effects, right? So this inflammatory cascade we're talking about. So we want to know the health of our gums. We want to know the health of that barrier. And then we also want to know what's inside the mouth that might be coming across this, what we call bacterial translocation, right? Because there's really strong associations between specific, what we call like red complex bacteria that are in the oral space that come across and cause downstream damage for our heart, our arteries, and our brain, you name it. So we want to be aware of that. The oral disease promoting microbes assesses the presence of some of these, the worst of the worst bacteria that we can find in the mouth, and that have been implicated in the manifestation of heart disease. So a great score. The oral pro-inflammatory, again, just inflammation, knowing the state of your oral cavity, and is it going to be a source of inflammation for the rest of your body. And I've seen this in patients where they'll come in and we'll do our labs and my physical exam, and everything's coming back normal, but they've got elevated inflammatory markers, their sed rate, their CRP, whatever it might be, ferritin. We look and I can't find anything. I look in their mouth and geez, here we go. We've got leaky gums, we've got gingivitis, we've got poor tooth health. It really can be this silent flame that people are walking around and not paying attention to. So we just want to highlight it for you. We're going to give you some materials today to really focus, on your oral hygiene products and tips, things to look at when you're purchasing products. And if you haven't tested with Viome, we really want to encourage you to look at our saliva tests and see where you're at now and get those personalized recommendations. We have personalized oral lozenges that have prebiotic fibers, probiotics for your mouth, postbiotics for your mouth, really to help balance that oral microbiome so it's doing you the most benefit, right? And really reducing that harm that it might produce. We have personalized toothpaste coming out that, again, it's going to, based off your scores on that activity, want to modulate that and move your microbiome. Wherever you might be starting, we want to move that to a better place. So all that is going to be available to you. We really think it's fantastic, and really trying to break the mold, and not a lot has changed in oral care or dental. Really, it's about drilling and filling those root canals. So we want to change the script there, be really proactive, really preventative, and really pay attention to our oral microbiome instead of just this kill them all strategy with the mouthwashes and everything. That's going to knock out all those good guys that do us so much good. All the nitrates that Janelle was talking about. We have microbes on our tongue that help metabolize those nitrates from those foods. Those go into circulation, and they have a direct impact on how we can maintain our blood pressure. It's ridiculous, the harm and the benefits that we can derive from these microbes that are in these spaces, both in our mouth and our gut and beyond. So again, just wanted to highlight that for you and give you this guide. I think we're at the end. We're short on time. We need to give resources.
Yes, we do. And so I just put up there the Assessing Your Cardiovascular Health handout that Grant put together for you guys that gives you all of those details about how to test for these different areas. If you want to know more information about your cardiovascular and metabolic health, get those numbers that he was talking about. All the information is in there with links in the PDF. Thank you very much, Grant, for putting that together. And I also have more links for you guys, so don't log off just yet. First of all, I do want to thank you for joining us here. And I just want to say, for joining us, if you use the code gut feeling, you can get $100 off of the full body intelligence test. And I'm going to also shoot out a link. This link has this code embedded into it. And if you'll go to the website, you have to go to the full body intelligence page, but that code will be put into your cart and give you $100 off of your full body intelligence test if you would like to test and join us. And we would love to be a partner with you on your health journey. And then also, so there's another note on here. Those of you who have HSA and FSA funds, it is possible to use those funds at checkout. There is a way to do that through TrueMed, and use those funds if you have some left to get your kit. Here is some information about how to use TrueMed on our website. If you would like to see that as a possibility for you, yay, that is totally
awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I did that. I think that's everything I have, because I gave out I think we got everything. They got the guide to oral health and all of that stuff. I really want to thank Grant and Janelle for putting all this amazing information together for us, and putting our focus on keeping our heart healthy and lowering that risk of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and all that stuff. Thank you all so much. And if you need anything else, just put a little note in the chat here, and I will get back to you. I think there was a couple of people who had questions who I was talking to. So I really thank you all very much, Grant and Janelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right.
Thanks,
so
y'all.
everybody have a great leap year day today, and we'll see you next month on our next content webinar. Thank you all very much.
Bye, everyone.